Hello and welcome to the Capitol Report on NTD Television. I'm Steve Lance. A House panel today probing the weaponization of the federal government. Journalists involved in the release of the Twitter files attending the hearing. Also, lawmakers voting on a bill to prohibit the government from suppressing information.
The House subcommittee on the weaponization of the federal government invited journalists involved in releasing the so-called Twitter files, Matt Taibbi and Michael Shellenberger, to testify. Just 1 hour before the scheduled start of Thursday's hearing, Taibbi released a new set of Twitter files called the Censorship Industrial Complex. Democrats said they didn't have access to those documents, telling Republicans,
"You may have been looking at this long before today's hearing."
They argued that Taibbi and Shellenberger were promoting a narrative favorable to the GOP. This led to a heated opening into the hearing, with Chairman Jim Jordan responding to the allegations.
I think they're brave individuals for being willing to come after they've been named in a letter from the Biden FTC.
Is this your question time now?
No, I'm responding to your ridiculous statements you made in your opening statement.
Okay, well, let's get on with it.
Oh, now we want to get on with it. So you can.
Democrats asked Taibbi on what day Elon Musk first talked to him about publishing the files. Taibbi said he could neither reveal that nor confirm that Musk was the source, since journalists don't reveal their sources.
So you're not going to tell us when Musk first approached you?
Again, Congresswoman, you're asking a journalist to reveal a source.
So then you consider Mr. Musk to be the direct source of all this?
No, now you're trying to get me to say that he is the source. I just can't answer your question.
Well, he isn't. If you're telling me you can't answer because it's your source, well, then the only logical conclusion is that he is, in fact, your source.
Well, you're free to conclude that.
Jordan then accused Democrats of violating Taibbi's First Amendment rights by demanding information about his sources. Meanwhile, the House voted on the Protecting Speech from Government Interference Act. Republican Congressman James Comer introduced the bill after the Twitter files alleged government suppression of speech. The files showed that the FBI pressured Twitter into taking down certain posts. The bill would prohibit federal officials from taking such steps, which it says suppresses First Amendment rights. The bill passed the House in Thursday's vote and is now on its way to the Senate. Reporting by Arian Pastar, NTD News.
And kicking off a spending battle with Republicans, President Biden unveiling his budget plan in Philadelphia. What's in it and how Republicans are expected to respond. NTD's Iris Tao is on location in Philadelphia, where the president spoke earlier today.
At a Union Hall here in Northeast Philadelphia, President Biden unveils his budget plan for the fiscal year of 2024. He says his plan will cut the deficit by $3 trillion over the next 10 years.
It's going to create good-paying jobs, and we can pay for these jobs by reducing the deficit two ways. Like, for example, cutting $160 billion in Medicare expenses is one. But we also have to ask the wealthiest and biggest corporations to begin to pay their fair share.
A major component of Biden's means to cut the deficit is to make the wealthy pay more in taxes. He's proposing to raise Medicare taxes on Americans making more than $400,000 a year, impose a new minimum tax on billionaires, and hike the corporate tax rate from 21% to 28%.
That paid for everything and still allowed me to reduce the deficit. Just begin to pay your fair share.
While some Democrats voice support for Biden's plan,
we're going to say to the folks at the very top, hey, you can contribute a little bit more to something that is beneficial to everyone.
Biden's proposals have little chance of becoming law as Republicans control the House and are opposing such tax increases.
So we'll analyze his budget and then we'll get to work on our budget. But unfortunately, the president being so far delayed delays us in this process as well.
And President Biden acknowledges former President Trump's reelection bid at one point during a speech. Watch.
I had a big fight with the former president and maybe future president. Bless me, Father.
And I asked President Biden when will he announce his reelection bid. This is what he told me.
President Biden, when will you announce your reelection bid?
When I tell you.
Biden's budget announcement on Thursday officially kicks off a battle with Republicans over tax rates and spending. It's also notable that Biden chose this place in Pennsylvania to make the announcement, which is a key battleground state for the 2024 presidential election. Reporting from Philadelphia, Iris Howe, NTD News.
More work on China today in the U.S. Congress. Lawmakers saying the CCP spy balloon is just the tip of the iceberg of what is the CCP's roots in the U.S. Lawmakers telling us just how extensive the Chinese regime's reach is and their ideas for how to confront it. Here's NTD's Melina Wisecup with more.
China's ownership of U.S. farmland has went from about $81 million worth back in 2010 to about $1.9 billion by the end of 2021. Those are the opening remarks made by Chairman August Pfluger at today's Homeland Security subcommittee hearing meant to explore the CCP threat here at home. Witness William Evanina, who served as a national security official under both the Obama administration and the Trump administration, says that this is a comprehensive strategic plan that's been in the works for the past decade.
Of the Chinese be able to do software and malware manipulation penetration on electrical grids and power stations outside of the military bases.
It's important to note that we are not talking about Chinese citizens or Chinese Americans. We are talking specifically about the government of China.
Democrats and Republicans have paid close attention to that CCP-run police station in New York City. And while Communist Party officials deny it, lawmakers aren't buying it, saying that it's unacceptable for the CCP to be using surveillance techniques here on American soil to target and harass Chinese nationals who are willing to speak out against Communist Party views.
We're just scratching the surface. We have so much work to do in order to keep Americans safe and really expose the truth about the lengths that the Chinese Communist Party will go to.
And this is one of a string of China hearings in Congress over the past 2 weeks, and it comes as Chinese Communist Party officials are warning the U.S. to hit the brakes, otherwise face, quote, conflict and confrontation. Congressman Lou Correa, who sits on the subcommittee, tells me he feels that right now U.S.-China relations are at an all-time low. He also expresses the need for the U.S. to play more of a role on the global scale to prevent China from further exporting its anti-freedom values.
Suppression, communist country versus democracy, our open democracy, First Amendment, freedom of speech, these things that are important.
As for solutions, lawmakers tell me the first step is to shed light on the issue and then show strength to Beijing. Chairman August Pfluger tells me that he doesn't believe conflict with China is certain, but he says that the first step towards deterrence is to defend the homeland. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Melina Wisecup, NTD News.
To discuss more about the probe into the origins of the virus, we had a chance to sit down with Congressman Ronny Jackson, member of the House Select Committee on the coronavirus pandemic. Here's our discussion.
Congressman Ronny Jackson, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate you having me.
Congressman, I want to ask you about the recent, admission from the FBI that the COVID lab leak theory may have actually been true. What are your initial thoughts from hearing those?
Well, my initial thoughts are where have they been for the last 2.5, 3 years, to be honest with you. I think that this is indicative of something that's happening all over the country right now. I think that the Republicans are in charge right now of the House of Representatives. We have oversight authority. We're taking an aggressive approach to oversight across the board, including the origins of COVID, which is one of the subcommittees that I'm on, the Select Committee for Coronavirus. And I think that people are seeing the writing on the wall right now. They realize that whistleblowers are coming forward and that the truth is coming out. People are scrambling to make sure that they get on the right side of this issue before they get drawn into it. And I think the FBI Director Wright coming out, he did that because Department of Energy came out with their assessment. And slowly but surely, everybody's going to start admitting what most of us in this country have known since day one. There's a lot out there. We have a lot of digging to do, but I'm excited to get to the bottom of this once and for all. And it's important because we can never let this happen again.
Congressman, at the White House, whether it's in the briefing room or in other venues, the question is being asked, President Biden, will you hold China accountable for the lab leak? And to you, what does holding China accountable actually look like?
Well, I don't know what it looks like now. I mean, I think, a couple years ago, held them accountable, and the entire world should have risen up and made China, financially responsible for what had happened. Now we need to get to the root of the cause too. I'm convinced that this came from the Wuhan lab. I don't really think it was released intentionally. I don't have any reason to believe that at this point. I think it was accidentally leaked out. But I want to know why they were doing that kind of research on this virus to start with. We need to go back and I think the main thing that we had, the big tool we have in our toolbox right now is sanctions. But the whole world should sanction China on this, right? China destroyed the economies of people, of countries all over the planet, and everyone should be upset about this, and everyone should be trying to hold China accountable. And if we all get together around the world and acknowledge that they did this and that they caused us, our health and our jobs and the education of our children and all these other things, I think that we can come together and China could be properly punished for this.
Congressman, I want to switch gears a little bit and ask you about the vaccines.
Yeah.
There's a lot of concern over the side effects. You also a medical doctor. How are you viewing this right now?
Well, I'm viewing this as the fact that, I've been saying this all along. This should have been a personal decision for each and every American to make on their own. They should have went into this knowing that this was a vaccine that was being utilized under emergency use authorization rules, essentially an experimental vaccine that we had no data on, no long-term data whatsoever. And we still don't have any long-term data. So I don't know what the long-term consequences of this are. I don't know if it's going to be dangerous in the long term for women that become pregnant. I don't know if it's going to affect the fertility of women that want to get pregnant. I don't know if it's going to continue to cause spikes in myocarditis in young, healthy males. I know that some of that stuff has been going on. We need to know. We don't know, and the fact that they forced this vaccine on large parts of our U.S. population via mandates in the healthcare industry and in the military, and really they forced it on a lot of people in other ways, people that had the choice of losing their job or getting vaccinated. This is a complete travesty. This was medical malpractice, and we need to get to the bottom of it, and we just don't have those answers yet. And the fact that they're wanting to give it to children right now, it makes me incredibly upset. There is absolutely positively no reason to give this vaccine to a young, healthy child. They do not have a high risk of hospitalization, illness, and certainly not of death. And there's no reason to be giving this vaccine, which is still being used in an experimental context under emergency use authorization, to young, healthy children. And that's just another indication of how far off our public health authorities in this country have become. People in this country have no trust or confidence in the public health sector at all anymore. And that's going to be a problem for us in the future.
Texas Congressman Ronny Jackson, thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Steve. Thank you.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.